Why don't we just start with that, Kevin? I know you were never a Donald Trump fan. It's been difficult for you watching your party figure out the process, and now tonight's results are pretty stunning. So where do the never Trump Republicans go from here?
Well, I mean, at this point, they're still Republicans. And I think that there's going to be, there's going to have to be some kind of reckoning. And you've got Trump, who has suggested it's going to be sort of a revenge thing. You've got others who are talking about, what is the heart of the party? And I think that is that's a valid question to go through. But tonight isn't the time to go through that. I mean, what we're seeing, if it holds up, is probably the most momentous election we've had in this country since Herbert Hoover gave way to FDR in 1932. There hasn't been this kind of repudiation of the status quo in 80 years.
We've had you come in, Kevin, along with Robin, to talk about these races as they've been going through these weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
We know where you stood too, Robin. I mean, you're a strong Hillary Clinton fan. What do you think about what Kevin is saying about how this election turned out, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, and still I'm a strong Hillary Clinton fan. I don't think that we're going to win this election tonight. I think a lot of us are coming to that harsh reality, that harsh conclusion right now. I think we're in uncharted territory. We've never elected a president of the United States who has neither had government experience nor military experience. And so, how the government is going to function is going to be all new territory. He's clearly set the bar pretty low in terms of what our public discourse is now, and I think, I don't know where we go from here, and I don't know that that's for me to answer at this point.
Well, as things are right now, Robin, let's just talk a little bit about what we've seen happen and the way we were watching how these states were going for one candidate or the other. We had one of the Hillary Clinton supporters on NBC saying that the Hillary Clinton ground game was good, but the Trump ground game was also very good.
I don't think it was a Trump ground game. I don't think he had a ground game. I think clearly no one saw the depth of the anger and reaction in Middle America, and frankly in rural America. I think we've divided up the electorate between the sort of urban and it's called ex-urban voters, and Donald Trump clearly rallied supporters that weren't, that no one had courted before. He found those voters, but he didn't have a traditional get out the vote program where people knocked door to door. He had rallies. So he's rewritten the playbook. He rewrote it in the Republican primary, and he's rewritten it in the general.
Well, I mean, I think what's clear is that, one, he did this his way. But I think that one of the reasons, and I don't want to make any excuses for why so many people didn't see this coming, but I think that one of the important things is that we lost sight of two facts. One is that in the end, Hillary Clinton was just not popular, and we underestimated that. And two, it wasn't about Trump to his supporters. They were projecting all sorts of things onto Donald Trump about his brilliance, about his business acumen, etc. But it was always going to be about them and about that pain, that fear, that alienation that he was validating. And we fell for the for the cover. We fell for the shtick that had him saying misogynist things, just being a machine that couldn't tell a fact from reality if his life depended on it. We fell for that surface. Underneath that, he was the only voice that a lot of people thought that they had, and so all they knew is they didn't like her. They knew they didn't like the way that the country was, like their lives were, and so damn it, they were going to go with him.
Kevin, let's just jump in. The fact is, if he is our next president, the entire nation is depending on him to do a good job with that. So it looks like we will have a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and a Republican House. However, he's had some very public fights with his fellow Republicans. So how do you see that shaking out?
I think that one of the things that we have to realize is that even if they don't get along, it's the powers of the presidency can be very persuasive. He's going to have a lot lot of levers, a lot of means of persuasion, and he's going to have the edge in those negotiations with the Congress. And that is going to make for policies that are more what he wants than, say, what others want.
We'll see history playing out. Every part of this election, from the conventions to the debates to day-to-day coverage, has surprised us all. Right. So we will continue to follow this and then see what the next steps are. And I'm sure Kevin and Robin will have you back into our studio for those conversations as well.